Hi, I'm Kyle, a tired therapist.
And I'm Jackie, also a tired therapist.
And together, we are
Two tired therapists. Welcome to the pod. I get so much shit about them. Like, anywhere I take it, like especially at work, if I go to a meeting and I have it, people are like, oh, you have a Stanley? And I'm like, yeah. I said I didn't buy any of them. They're like, what do you mean? And I say that one was, well, this is technically from is the white one. And
Right.
And they're like, oh, you just have a Stanley? And I said, yeah, it's nice.
I keep mine at home. It's too big to lug around.
Yeah. Well, then they asked me if I waited for a pink one, and I was like,
No.
No.
Well,
Welcome
back.
Welcome.
A historic moment today.
Some would say.
We're live on location.
Yeah, different location. At the number one fan's home. Yes.
Greg's home.
He's also sitting.
And he's also in the room.
5 feet from me.
And it's different.
It's a little different.
We have an audience.
Yes.
There's a lot of pressure today to perform for our number one fan. He's here to keep us accountable.
Good thing we always perform. I don't know.
Oh my. Anyways.
Good thing I'm always ready to go, I guess.
Sure. Well, there you go. Welcome back. What's going on?
Not much.
Talk about it. Tell us the tea.
There is no tea. The eclipses in a few weeks.
The eclipse. People are traveling to go to these podunk
Let me tell
states.
you what's happening is there's a lot of talk about this, and they're expecting, I think, 1 million people that day.
Isn't that insanity?
To show up to the state that we live in.
Right.
Which, if you haven't put it together by now, so sorry, but
right.
We won't repeat it. But
right, go back and listen to other episodes.
Part of the eclipse is like we're in totality. Other parts of the state are not, but
the
we're
path of totality.
Yes, but they're expecting 1 million people. There's a lot of hullabaloo going on about the whole thing.
And we don't live in like the metropolis part of the state.
Mm-mm.
We live in the podunk part.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious how that will go.
Yeah, there's a lot of well, I guess schools are closed that day for people.
We're closed. Our office closed.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
That's nice.
A lot of doctors' offices are closing.
Oh, that's nice.
Because there's going to be so much.
I'm honestly surprised my work is not closed, but it's not. But they are actively discouraging most of us not to be on the roads that day. So I will probably work from home. Yeah. So, which is fine. I'd rather do that anyway.
And it's probably the start of the apocalypse, so might as well be at home for that.
Yeah, my mom. Hi, Mom. She's coming in, so.
Is she?
She's coming in for the week. Yeah. You're welcome to come over on that day if you want.
Well, we were talking. It is my birthday, too.
Yes, it is.
So.
Yeah. So, yeah. No, she's coming over. My dad is coming in, allegedly. We'll see.
Really?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, we'll see.
That'll be interesting.
I don't think he listens to this podcast, but yes, he's talking about coming in on that day, which I don't know how that will go travel-wise, but we'll see.
We'll see. Yeah, on
it's
the
gonna
day
be
of.
a dump.
No,
I feel like it's.
Maybe not the day of, because people already be there.
Yeah, I'm wondering. I really kind of want to look at hotels like in the area and see. Yeah, I think they are, but I just wanted to see how much they were charging for a night, because I bet you it's in the 300 to 400 range, even at like the cheapy motels. But
you could like Airbnb your house.
I mean,
for probably
you've seen our backyard.
$400 a night.
We're gonna sit out there, so I mean, I could if I could have sold space in my backyard, I would have made a lot of money. So
there's still time. There's still time.
So I guess don't miss that if you're into it. Don't look right at the sun. That's a bad.
Get your glasses.
Bad call. Don't do that.
Right.
I was in a meting with some doctors this week, and they were all saying how terrible that is. So don't do that. Don't get the glasses from Amazon. There's a 10-pack for like $20.
Or go. They're selling them literally everywhere.
Really?
I saw them at Kroger.
Oh, okay.
All the grocery stores.
They're all
Justin's confirming.
I don't go to the grocery stores. I haven't been in a while.
Jackie doesn't do domesticated lifestyle.
No, I don't. I absolutely do not. So
Justin's shaking his head. No, he's also confirming that's true.
Well, I've not seen them. I've not seen like legit ones, but I've heard people find them on Amazon.
That's true. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't know. Anyways. Well, Kyle, tell us, what are you tired of this week / whatever time frame you want it to be from?
I think, I don't know if this is this week necessarily, excuse me, this is an old one, but the porn stash making a comeback.
Yeah, it is kind of having like a resurgence for some reason.
I'm not sure about it. How do you feel about it? I think it's tired. I think there's very few people who can pull it off.
I agree. That's what I was gonna say. There's not very many people that can actually do it.
Would you, if producer Justin had a porn stash, would you
a hard no.
divorce him immediately?
Yeah, that's a hard. I wouldn't let him.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't. I think you have to have a certain. I don't know. There's a certain.
You got to have like facial hair. You know.
Yeah, you have to be able to
have genetics.
Yeah, and I also think you have to be confident enough to pull it off, and a lot of people aren't.
I agree.
Yeah, It's true.
Mm-hmm.
I also think, I don't know. I just think
you're also not doing porn.
Right. And I also think if you're not willing to keep it up, like actually groom it, that's another problem. I'm just saying, because I think a lot of people just let it, like, that stuff go. But anyways, yes, I'm tired of it too.
Yeah.
Freddie Mercury is about the only person that I'd be like, yeah.
Right. Like that's a porn stash.
Yeah. That looks, yeah.
Right.
Not Ron Jeremy.
Cut the cameras. I gotta go.
He has like dementia now. He's like
he's
not even
old.
I know, but he's like, well, he got in trouble. Like he got arrested and convicted of like rape, I think, and then he
is that surprising?
Now he's got like dementia. Yeah, I think he's in prison. It was.
Let's find out.
I must Google. I'm pretty sure he is.
He was born in.
He's being released. Oh, he was released.
30 counts of assault.
Yeah.
12 counts of forcible
He was
rape.
on The Surreal Life a long time ago. That's how I found out who he was. It was a great reality show from the early aughts that I used to watch at my dad's house because he had cable.
Well.
I'm just saying. That's how I came to know who he was.
Well,
I was like,
I'm sure. I'm sure.
My mom's thrilled to hear this.
Right. So sorry.
So sorry, Gabby. Anyways, well.
What are you tired of?
Well, so I wrote this one down, and I don't know why. Something must have happened the day that I programmed this episode, but I wrote small talk with people you barely know. I'm tired of it. I cannot. I'm so bad at it anyways. Like, if I don't know the person, it's not good. It's like weather.
Like, you go to the dentist and they're like, "Oh, you've been on any vacations lately?" Like that.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, which I did recently go to the dentist. Then the hygienist was like talking to me, and she was like, "Oh, where are you from?" And I told her where I was from, and she was like, "Oh, I'm also from there." And I was like, "Oh, fuck." Because I was like, I'm like, "Oh no," I'm like, I just can't keep up. I don't know. And also just people I don't really see that often, but. Like for my work, I have to like talk to people who I don't see very often. And so every time I see them, it's kind of awkward because it's like, hi, haven't seen you in a month. How are you? Mm-hmm. Great. Weather's great, isn't it? Like, I mean, there's no like,
right. Like, there's how's your kids?
Yeah, I just don't like it. And I'm not good at it without.
What would you rather do? Do you want to be like,
oh God,
like what trauma have you experienced like that?
Oh, like get too deep, too fast,
yeah.
or small talk.
Like,
I think I'd rather do the small talk.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a good, like, when somebody tells me something traumatic, I'm like, cool. I can't. There's a reason why I'm
because you're not a therapist.
This is a reason I'm not practicing therapist anymore.
Right.
Still keeping my license, but not practicing.
I want to get the deep stuff. Hi, my name's Kyle. So how's your relationship with your father?
Yeah, is it great?
Is he still alive?
Is he still alive?
Is there anything you wish you would have said to him before he died?
You feel bad you didn't say anything to him? Ooh.
Right.
Last conversation was a fight.
Oh, unfinished business, honey. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Right. Here's my card anyways. Yeah.
That's
marketing.
That's insane and I love it.
Mm-hmm. Great. Very good. Well,
yeah. Speaking of insane.
This podcast.
Well.
And the topic.
Yes.
Of our episode today.
I know. I'm going to have to think of a good title for this because I don't feel like. I know our titles are usually really funny. And
I'm sure we'll say something unhinged you can use.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, and there's so much. This could be, I was telling Kyle off air, this could be probably 85 different. I could make an episode on so many different things. So I just tried to make a generic episode of something that probably everybody has heard of but doesn't know about. But I know a lot about it because of my internship way back. We won't talk about the year it was, but it was a good 10 years ago. But not guilty by reason of insanity.
Yeah.
What do you know, Kyle? Anything?
I know it's very difficult
That's accurate.
to make that happen.
Yes, that is accurate.
And it takes there's like a lot of processes.
Yes.
Like pretty much it's like the person has to be not investigated, assessed. Like typically like one side's going to assess and then the other side's going to assess and then like a third person's probably going to assess, and it's really hard to prove, because you have to prove, especially if it's something that happened a long time ago, you have to prove that in that moment they didn't know between right or wrong. And that can be really hard, especially if people have had treatment or are better now, or like it was just a one-off. I just watched I've been watching How to Get Away with Murder.
Okay, that has been recommended to me. I've never watched it.
It's okay. I've
heard it's good, but it's not like
it's great. Like Grey's Anatomy but lawyers.
Yeah, got it. Fun.
And so they had one of those cases where they were trying to and it was like that, and they ended up, spoiler alert, getting it. Like he got it. But it was really hard because they were saying he had been in isolation for like over a year, and then the day he came out is when he murdered somebody. So they were trying to say that him being in the hole for all that time led to a psychotic break.
Well, that does happen.
So, but it was very hard. He had to like go through all these assessments and all this stuff. And
so I will just tell you right now, I didn't talk about any of that stuff because that could be a whole nother episode. I guess if people like this, let us know, comment or whatever. I mean,
dive in
and tell it, because I could spend probably a good 20 hours talking about this whole thing. But I figured, and Kyle knows because he's watched How to Get Away with Murder, but a lot of people don't, which is fine. But if you don't know, it's called NGRI within the system, so that's probably what I'll call it, because not guilty by reason of insanity is
too much to say.
It's too much. So, but I know about it because when I did my internship for grad school, I worked at a state hospital and I worked on the not guilty by reason of insanity unit. So everybody on it, except for maybe a few people, the other people were guilty but mentally, which is another separate thing that I am not going to get into today because that's a little bit different, similar but different. They'd all been adjudicated not guilty by reason of insanity. So what that means is they went through the legal system, they got charged with a crime, they were convicted not guilty by reason of insanity in the state that I was in at the time, which states are different in how they do this. The state that we live in currently doesn't have this, but the state that I was in is when you are found not guilty by reason of insanity, instead of going to prison, you go to a state hospital.
Right.
And then there's a whole lot about that.
Like they're not going to let you out into public.
No, and I can make a whole nother episode about that process, and I kind of talk about it a little bit because I highlight probably the most famous not guilty by reason of insanity case ever in the history of America for this, just so you can kind of see. But I loved my internship; it was great. I had a great time, and I'm very passionate about people who are not guilty by reason of insanity / seriously mentally ill, because it's one and the same for the most part. So. I'm going to try not to talk really fast because when I get really excited, people tell me I talk really fast. Well, this is so much stuff that so anyways, so as Kyle said, it's referring to a defense, not guilty by reason of insanity. NGRI is referring to a defense that a defendant can plead in a criminal trial. In an insanity defense, the defendant admits to the action, but asserts the lack of culpability based on mental illness, which is this was from Cornell School. I will link tons of stuff in the show notes. Cornell School of Law. Basically, that means at the time of the crime, the defendant was not competent and therefore not responsible for their actions. The court system uses several different tests, which is, again, that's a totally, it's not like a sit and written down test, but it's like competency and all that stuff. Yeah. Not every state uses the same test, and some places are more backwards in this regard than others. So there's 4 different types of tests, and I had to memorize all these when I was going through grad school, and I was like, oh, I triggered. It's like, I feel like I'm in grad school again. Trigger
warning.
So I am lifting this straight from Mental Health America because it's probably the most succinct way I could describe this. So the first test and or the first way is the Monotone Rule, which is the oldest one. It's from like the 1800s. So this is the Monotone Rule. Says the defendant either did not understand what he or she did or failed to distinguish right from wrong because of a disease of the mind. This legal test for insanity was purely cognitive and was established by British common law in the mid-19th century. So we're talking about 1800s, like I said. The Monotone rule was embraced with almost no modification by the American courts and legislatures for more than 100 years until the mid-20th century. So this was the most widely used one for the longest time. And it's named after the guy that got to use it. I can't remember what his crime was, but his last name was, I think his name was like Daniel Monotone or something. But most of the U.S. states use the Monotone rule.
Yep.
So that's that. The second one is the irresistible impulse test, which says as a result of a mental disease, defendant was unable to control his impulses, which led to a criminal act. This is a purely volitional test. The irresistible impulse test is used by a number of states in combination with the Monotone rule. So essentially the test allows for a defendant to be found not guilty by reason of insanity if his or her mental illness was such that, although recognizing the wrongness of the offense, they were compelled to commit the offense anyway. So the person saying, I know I did the wrong thing, but my insert whatever diagnosis you want, which we'll also talk about some of that later, compel them to commit the crime anyway. Then there's the Durham rule. So this is regardless of clinical diagnosis.
This is triggering me too because it's coming back from my criminal justice days.
Yeah, I had to take a mental health law class in grad school, and it was like, for me, since my degree is forensic psychology, I had to like learn the ins and outs of all these, and I definitely, as soon as I was done with the class, was like boink. But this is triggering. So the Durham rule is regardless of clinical diagnosis, defendant's mental defect resulted in a criminal act. In the Durham case, the DC Circuit Court ruled that a defendant is entitled to acquittal if the crime was the product of his mental illness, i.e. the crime would not have been committed for the disease. But for the disease. The test is broader than the Monotone test or the irresistible impulse test. The test has been more lenient guidelines for insanity defense, and it also addressed the issue of convicting mentally ill defendants, which was allowed under Monotone rule. However, Durham standard drew much criticism because of its expansive definition of legal insanity, which I guess is true. I mean, if you're saying, I mean, you could just say I was crazy.
I was crazy.
I was crazy, and that was it. So there's that. And then the final one is the Model Penal Code test, which, because of a diagnosed mental defect, the defendant either failed to understand the criminality of his acts or was unable to act within the confines of the law. The MPC thus allows both lack of understanding and lack of control as a basis for pleading the insanity defense. The MPC also codifies a mens rea defense, which is some legal thing that I don't understand, and establishes a limited diminished capacity defense for cases when the insanity defense does not apply. So those are the 4 different types. Most states do Monotone. Some of them do other ones. Most of them don't use Durham. Some use a combination of Durham and other stuff. But so there are a few states that don't allow the insanity defense against criminal charges, which are Idaho, Kansas, Montana, and Utah. 3 of these states, with the exception of Kansas, allow guilty but insane verdicts, which is the same thing basically as guilty but mentally ill, which often provide institutionalization in lieu of prison. So you're going to a state hospital instead of prison.
But they want you to be like, oh no, you're guilty and insane.
Well, and we can discuss what's better. Prison, I've worked in both, so I can tell you what's better. But most states recognize that legal insanity either use a Monotone rule, sometimes in the combination with the irresistible impulse sense, or the Model Penal Code. Only New Hampshire uses the Durham standard. So sorry, this is all from places I've lived in. And then
do you think there's a difference in if it's a red state or a blue state?
Yes and no. I think the not to get political, but I think some of the states that are like more blue or more liberal have better laws for this. I
would agree.
I think some places don't. But I'll tell you, when I worked at the state hospital, it was really interesting. I talked to a lot of the guys there, and it was male. So I asked them, I said, would you rather go to prison? Some of them told me this without me asking, but a couple of them I just asked. I was like, would you rather go to prison, or what's your deal? Because the way that it worked for them is they essentially they called them theme dates, which basically meant they got the absolute maximum that they would have gotten in prison. So like in prison, you can get time cuts. So like if you let's say you commit burglary, they give you 10 years. You could honestly serve probably 4 or 5 years and get out. With pleading not guilty by reason of insanity and going to a state hospital, if you get 10 years, that's your theme date. Your theme date is 10 years. You do have the opportunity to shorten it, but it's, oh my God, it's so hard. It's so hard. And I won't go all into the ins and outs. So I asked some of them, I was like, what do you think? And a lot of them were like, I wish I'd gone to prison.
Right.
Because it's so much harder to get out of a state hospital. You have to go back through the courts. You have to go back through a judge. You have to do all these things. You have to basically show that you are stable, which can be really hard if you are. I mean, and it sounds terrible, and I'm not saying some of these people should have not gotten privileges, because that's also how you can get earned privileges back in a state hospital. But like, if you did one wrong thing, like they would use that against you, and then you couldn't get your privileges. Like, so like if somebody yelled at you and you yelled back at them, even if you didn't do anything, you also lost your privileges, and then you couldn't like get better passes and stuff like that. So a lot of them told me that they wish they would have gone to prison instead, because they would have known that they were getting out.
Well, and how legit do you think some of these that do get it are? What's the tea you think on that? Because I feel like some it's probably just a way to like.
When I worked at the state hospital, there was not one of them that I felt like wasn't really like mentally ill.
Okay.
So there was
like it's legit.
And there were a couple guys on the unit that I worked where they refused medication, which is their right to an extent. And they hired kind of a big name lawyer, and they fought, and they didn't have to take medications. But I'm telling you, one of them I would say, okay, fine. He's probably fine. One of them though, he insisted that he said, I wasn't, he was like, I'm not crazy. But the guy, what his crime was he killed his boss, broad daylight, stalked him, found him in broad daylight, shot him, killed him.
It's the stalking part.
Yeah. Well, and he continued to stalk while he was in the hospital. And actually, our internship supervisor was it was my friend and I who we worked on the same unit, and she was very much like, don't talk to him as much as you can. Like, don't like stay away from him, like in groups or whatever. That's one thing, but like, don't talk to him outside of stuff, because he will stalk you. He was actively stalking the librarian in the state hospital while I was there, having to see like that whole. But then he was like, I'm not crazy. But then,
if you have to say it.
Well, and here was the best part. So every shift change in the morning, the night shift nurses, there was a meeting every morning. So that we had this meeting, we were having a meeting for a couple weeks, and they kept saying he would come out in the middle of the night dressed all up in formal wear, would go to the day room, and he would sit and he would read the newspaper. And we're like, okay, like that's weird, but okay. And they're like, well, the newspaper was upside down.
Oh, well, so he was.
And he wasn't like stalking, like he was reading the newspaper.
Sure.
Like, poor guy.
Sure.
But he was an interesting, he was kind of scary, but it was really interesting. But no, there was not one person faking on that unit. Oh my God, absolutely not. Even the ones who are really well medicated and doing really well, like some of them, there was only one that I would say that I feel like I would have been okay with him being released. Actually, there was a couple that I was okay with, but a lot of them were still really ill, still not well, and not for lack of treatment or trying in the state hospital. It's just the disease, I guess. Mental illness is tough.
Yeah.
So, no, we'll get into the statistics and some of the other stuff, and we'll talk through a case, but let's take a break, and then we'll come back. I'll talk about statistics, and then I'll talk about the most famous not guilty by reason of insanity case.
Perfect.
Okay.
We'll be right back. We're back.
All right, let's talk stats. Are you also triggered one more time from grad school?
Oh, please. Please, I love to be triggered about grad school.
Oh my God. Well, that and I guess undergrad too. I had to take stats at undergrad. Anyways, okay. As you said earlier, I won't say it, but I will say it one more time. It's so extremely difficult to plead not guilty by reason of insanity. I will say I think the media really like bolsters some of these cases, so it feels like people are pleading it, but they're not really. So, and honestly, I was trying to research newer, like within the last 5 or less years statistics, and it is so hard because there's really not that much, and they're all pretty much the same. But the not guilty by reason of insanity plea is used in less than 1% of cases.
Yeah.
So
I think there's a stereotype that lawyers would be like, well, let's just try it. And
no,
they don't,
it's so
you can't do that. Like, you can't just like, well, let's just try it and see what happens.
No.
There are very strict rules and procedures that you have to go through.
I didn't talk about, and again, if you don't like this and you want me to talk more about it, I absolutely can. But I mean, there's got to be a lot of, like, a documented history of mental illness. Like, you can't just, like, it couldn't be just me walking in and being like, let me plead guilty, my reason of insanity. Also, people who want to plead that usually are not insane.
Right.
So sorry, they're not.
If you're having to ask.
Yeah. Well, it's not wrong.
Right.
So I did find an article from Psychology Today from 2020 that reports that 1% only use that, and then only 25% of that 1% is actually successful in getting the actual NGRI plea. So for math's sake, if it's 100 people that plea it, only 25 people will actually be successful, which is probably a shame in some, because I bet you all of those people need it. But I met people in prison who I felt like would have benefited from an NGRI plea. And don't get that same thing. So that's literally all the statistics on it, because there's just not enough. And there was some, I found a case from, I think it was from Israel, which I didn't feel like was the greatest like sample size, because it was just so different. But they did a study where they talked to like 75 people who'd pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, and like 56 who didn't, and like just the differences in like the race and the gender and the age and stuff like that.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, it wasn't a big enough study. It wasn't. I don't know. I read it and I was like, there's not.
Is there anything on what diagnoses get? Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Same page.
I was about to say, we can talk about diagnoses really quick. I forgot that I had that in my notes, but I did. So, this is mostly my own personal observation. There's not like tons of, I mean, you can probably guess what it is if you've listened to any of our other episodes on psychosis, but most have some type of psychotic disorder. So you're talking about like schizophrenia, you're talking about, bipolar 1 with psychosis, like anything that has psychosis. I would be shocked if there was somebody who pled it and was successful who had depression or anxiety, didn't have psychosis. Drug induced is another one that I was like looking at, but
I bet that's harder because
it's hard because you get, if you're going to say what I'm saying. If you smoke something and you go nuts, you probably 8 times out of 10, you'll probably go back to being not bonkers. So it's hard to do that.
And they'll put I believe the legal term is onus, the onus on to you, because when you, again, triggered criminal justice days of when you do something. So if you do drugs, like you purposely say, I'm going to do drugs, you are taking on any consequences from that too. It's the same thing with drunk driving. Like, you can't be like, oh, I was drunk. No, you drank and then got behind the wheel. So you absorbed the consequences.
I don't think I knew a single person. There was 25 guys on that unit. I don't think any of them had a just psychotic disorder because of drugs. Like, they all had it.
Now, if you were drugged, that might be a different story.
Yeah.
But
I would say the majority of them had schizophrenia or some type of schizophrenia spectrum, which, but I would say, the ones that I still think about to this day that I worked with, I mean, they were schizophrenia.
What do you think? Because we know that even though it's the stereotype that people with psychosis and schizophrenia cause a lot of, oh my gosh, are we on the same page again? What do you think sets apart these people that end up doing something about it?
Oh, okay. So
that was gonna be my question.
Okay, no, it's a good question, because I was gonna say, I just want to highlight, because I think a lot of people hear schizophrenia, they get scared. Yeah. Love working with people with schizophrenia. Best population, in my opinion. I won't say anything more about it, but I do want to say that they're more than likely to be a victim of a crime than actually commit a crime. And there's tons of research about that. So I won't get into
research. Yeah.
But I think one of the studies I read, and it was talking about the differences and what's the difference. I think a lot of it, at least I'll tell you a story of one of them if you want to hear it.
Please.
This was a guy at the time that I knew him. He was in his early 30s. So I think when the crime happened, he was in his 20s. This is kind of brutal, so trigger warning, I guess. If you don't want to listen to this, I guess skip ahead a bunch. So he was younger. He was newishly diagnosed. The thing that made it kind of sad was that the parents really tried to help him, and especially the dad. And the dad himself was in the medical profession, so he kind of had an understanding about mental illness. But the guy that I knew, he was really, really ill. Also, his mom had mental illness, so there was a little bit of a genetic link there. And they both, I guess, were not taking their meds. And the dad left, and the two of them, the dad basically locked the door, locked him from the inside out, and said, I'll see you when my, shift is over or whatever. And he killed his mom.
Oh my.
Felt very badly about it. I mean,
yeah.
On Mother's Day, I mean, he was a wreck. I worked on Mother's Day, and it was a hot mess. It felt really bad about it, but he was not on his meds.
Yeah.
And then his mom wasn't on his meds, and he talked to me about it one day, and he was like, I remember thinking my mom was the devil. Like, I remember like being told she was the devil. Like, I thought she was gonna kill me if I didn't kill her. Like, a lot of it too, like, religious themes can be kind that's because
what I was gonna think.
Yeah, if there's a religious undertone, that also makes it worse. I knew a lot of them had killed a family member or had there was him, he killed his mom, there was a guy who killed his brother, there was a guy who killed his dad, his mom, and his brother. There was another guy who was coming in at the time when I was leaving. He was like 20 years old. I mean, he was like young. He almost killed his mom. I mean, a lot of them perpetrate against people that they know. Another guy had killed his dad and felt really bad. I mean, like they all felt really bad about it. None of them were like, I'm glad I killed that bitch. Like none of them ever said that. They were all really, but then of course when they were medicated, they're totally different. So it's like some of them had a hard time appreciating, I guess, how they were back then. But I would say, I think a lot of it is just, if they're not medicated or they're not taking treatment seriously, and then the religious stuff, it gets really that. And if they have really bad persecutory delusions, so like if they think somebody's after them, like there was one of the guys who killed his dad, he was like thinking his dad was like talking to the government about him, and his dad was like a lawyer. I mean, like his dad wasn't talking to the government.
Like probably like command hallucinations is a big one too.
Yeah, that's so. I mean, that's kind of the main difference. Is just there's a lot more. The illness is a lot worse. Like they're in their worst state of the illness versus like you're not going to see somebody taking meds and doing really well and then killing. I mean, more than likely, it's going to be when they're in their worst phase, like not taking meds, not
and it's impulsive
in treatment.
Too,
yes,
right?
it is. Yeah,
they weren't planning it.
Like, no.
Like I'm crazy and I'm planning.
The only one I'd say that actually planned it was the guy who shot his boss because he shot him at a very specific. I don't want to give too many details away, but he shot him in broad daylight at a place he knew he was going to be during the day. I mean, but then the other thing that people who have like seriously mental illness will do is they'll stay at the scene of the crime. I know almost every single, well, not every single, I would say probably about 80% of people that I met stayed at the scene of the crime after it happened and waited for the police to arrest him. Like they didn't run. They didn't, no, that's not everybody, but a lot of them do that. So, and that's also a hallmark of like a mentally ill person too. They'll stay. Some of them will even call the cops on themselves, which is even worse, which does happen. So anyways, so yeah, it's interesting for sure. It's there's so much like that I think play into it, but yeah, I think just having command delusions about Jesus telling you that, Satan's coming and
because who are you going to listen to if not Jesus?
Satan.
Well, hold on.
No.
Yeah, you got a point.
Right. So I want to ask, do you know who this not guilty by reason of insanity case is? I think if you think deeply enough about it, it's not in our generation. Like we were not alive when this happened.
Is it a famous?
Yes, it's
case?
famous.
Is it Manson?
No.
Oh.
No, Manson wasn't not guilty by reason of insanity. I don't think, was he?
I don't know. No, I've been trying to think about it. I can't. Was it a serial killer?
No. No.
Oh, okay. Then I don't think I do. Probably when you say it, I will.
Yeah.
I'm sure I learned about it.
Some people will know. I think our parents will know who it is. Anybody who's older than us will probably know, like
John Benet Ramsey. I don't know.
We should do it. That would be a great
episode. I
would
love to do that. Oh my
I'm gonna
God.
put it on our little
Let's put it on
list
the list.
because you and I feel like you and I we're gonna solve it. Anyways, no, it's John Hinckley Jr. Sound familiar? No.
Yeah.
Okay, so he is probably, I would say, the most famous person. Also, his story highlights the trials and tribulations of trying to get released from a state mental hospital. I wrote a very short paragraph, although I have lots of extra facts, so if you ask me questions, I might know it. He attempted to assassinate President Reagan in 1981.
Oh, yeah.
So if you Google him, you'll see.
He thought, not Jodie Foster.
Yes, Jodie Foster.
Was it Jodie Foster?
Yes, Jodie Foster.
Wanted him to do it or something?
Yes. Okay, so yes, he So he believed that the fame he would get from shooting President Reagan and killing him would impress actress Jodie Foster.
Yes.
Because Hinckley had become obsessed with the movie Taxi Driver, which is which I didn't do the whole plot for, but it's a movie. Robert De Niro is the main person. Jodie Foster is like a child prostitute in it. It sounds like a very bleak movie. I would never watch this, but essentially what happens is like Robert De Niro, the main character. Oh, I feel like my mom has probably watched this, and if I get this wrong, she's gonna call me. It's so sorry, Mom. But essentially, like the main character in that movie becomes obsessed with somebody. She sort of rebuffs him. He becomes obsessed with her. He meets Jodie Foster. They have like a friendship. It's not untoward, I don't think, in that way, but then he like kills a couple people to save Jodie Foster and then sends her back to her parents because she's like 12 years old in the movie and she's very young. But he became, I forget what the guy's name is. Oh, that's so bad. My mom's gonna be like yelling. She's probably yelling. She's
gonna write in. Yeah.
So he became obsessed with that thinking, and then he got obsessed with Jodie Foster and thought, oh, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna shoot the president because she'll love that. He wrote her letters. He stalked her for a while prior to shooting. I read his Wikipedia page is actually pretty good. I did try to find stuff that was not Wikipedia, but I ended up using a lot of it. He was declared not guilty by reason of insanity in 1982. The shooting was pretty bad. Reagan did not die, obviously. If you know anything about politics, he did not die. He did wound James Brady, who was a big person I think he was the press secretary. I don't know who he was. He was somebody in Reagan's cabinet.
Some flop.
Which he ended up dying not that long ago, and then they ruled his death actually a homicide because he died from the effects of the gunshot wounds. I think he became paralyzed, which was another thing too. So, and Hinckley, he was really.
Yeah.
He was really.
Didn't he have? Wasn't it that like bonkers. What is it? Aromatic or
erotomatic?
Erotomatic.
So he thought, he really thought Jodie Foster would fall in love with him. I believe to this date she has never talked about him or done it.
Famed queen of the lesbians, Jodie Foster.
Yeah,
friend of the pod. Hi, Jodie.
Hi, Jodie. I don't think to date she's ever talked about him in an interview. Like I don't think she's ever.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. But anyways, so after he got,
I'm sure it's trauma.
Oh, I can't imagine.
For her.
But he was sent to St. Elizabeth's Hospital in Washington, D.C. In 1982. And so I won't get into every single year of his life there because there's so many. But he basically, he worked his way up in treatment. He was able to demonstrate stability. He was granted conditional releases and supervised off-site visits, which doesn't, where I worked, that didn't really necessarily happen, but other places do something like that. But they do require you have to go back through court. Like you have to go back through in front of a judge. You do have to go back and you have to say like,
I'm court ordered. So that would make sense.
Like where I was from, if you were going to get your green pass, which means you could go off grounds with staff, you had to go in front of a judge.
Sure.
And there were other passes that were like, there was the red pass, which means you could only be on your unit. There was a pink pass, which you could go to the library, you could go to the gym. Like, I mean, so there's things like that. So I assume what he went through is similar, but there wasn't a whole lot about the hospital itself. But in 2003, he was allowed to have a driver's license to visit his mom's home, like overnight, which was a big deal.
Oh.
So that's 20, almost 21 years later after the fact. Mm-hmm. So you got to think, well, and this, I can't speak for this because I don't know what he would have been charged with, I guess, if he'd have gone through the criminal system without the NGRI. Because, I mean, he'd gone to federal because it was a presidential thing.
Terrorism.
Isn't
it terrorism?
I think he probably got
president.
I think it'd be like attempted murder. I mean, they might charge him with terror, but I don't think his stuff wasn't terroristic
well, yeah, I guess
level.
It wasn't. Yeah, you're right.
But assuming he wouldn't have gotten life in prison, like I don't know how long his sentence would have been. So think about in 1982, and then when I tell you when he actually got out, how long of a time period that is. Like officially, no more like because he was supervised. I mean, he was supervised for a long time.
I'm sure.
So in 2003, he could have a driver's license and visit his mom's home. In 2011, so 8 years later, he petitioned for more freedom and was granted up to 8 17-day visits to his mother's home a year. So, I mean...
What a random number.
Yeah, I don't know why, because I'm going to do the math. 8 times 17, I don't know how many days. That's 136 days a year out of 365. So, like a third of the year-ish, you could be...
Yeah, I guess.
His mom was very supportive of him, which I think really helped. His parents were... A lot of stuff I read was really interesting. It was his parents were very Republican. And when he shot, they were like, oh, we did everything right. Sound like he had a tough relationship with his dad. His dad died in the early 2000s. And then mom died a couple years ago, actually. But
there's going to be like autobiography or something out there,
well,
right?
Oh, I'm sure. Well, let me tell you. At the end, I'll tell. I'll
his manifesto.
His manifesto. Oh, he did write some stuff.
Did he?
Yeah, he did.
No.
Well, he wrote Jodie Foster a bunch and was like, "Please love me," and she didn't ever answer.
She didn't.
Not that you ever should, but anyways. So in 2016, he was released from St. Elizabeth's and sent to his mother's home full time.
Okay.
He still had to report to the courts, and he still had to report to a judge, which. The community that he was living in was not happy. I read a lot of stuff that the people who were pissed, which I can understand. I'm not saying it's not untrue, but I will just tell you 90% of the people in prison right now will release someday and be your neighbor. So just saying that.
There you go. There's the tea.
And then in 2018 it was ruled he can move out of her home and into his own home. So he lived with her for a couple years and then was able to move into his own place.
Mm-hmm.
Still on supervision, still had to report, still had to do all these things. I read an article where he was interviewed and this was a couple years ago, and he was just saying how tough it was because also at the time he could not profit off of anything from it, so he couldn't do interviews for the longest time. It wasn't until like 2016 I think they started letting him do interviews. And he painted and he did other stuff at the state hospital, which he could sell for money, and I think people bought stuff. So then he moved into his own place. In 2021, a federal judge approved him for full unconditional release starting in June 2022, which unfortunately his mom died like a couple months after the release or the judge's approval, which is a shame because he was very close to his mom. Some article I read said that his brother moved close, so his brother is now like in the area that he lives in.
Is he still alive?
Oh yes, he is, honey.
Is he?
Yes, he is.
What's he doing? What's he up to?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. Well, so he did say he has done an interview where he expressed remorse for what he did and apologized to the victims and Jodie Foster. Says he feels bad.
Does he still love Jodie?
I don't think so.
Remains to be seen.
No, he hasn't said anything about that.
Does he know she's a lesbian?
I'm sure he does now.
Yeah.
They probably. I mean,
she's not quiet about it. Yeah, I mean, she's not
I'm
loud
not
either,
her.
But yeah, I mean, no judgment. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm sure he does
podcast.
now. I'm sure he, I mean, there's TVs and stuff in state hospital, so I imagine he probably saw things as it happened. No, and I'm not trying to glorify. I don't want people to think that I'm saying like, oh, shoot a president and this is fine. Oh. He has a YouTube. He sings. He's got an album. He released an album. He's actually not that bad.
Up.
Yeah, so you can Google or go to YouTube and hit John Hinckley Jr. And he seems like
What's he singing about? Is it country?
It's like country folky stuff.
It is.
The problem he said he has is that he'll book a venue and then people will get so mad that there'll be backlash and then they have to cancel. So he's like he's not doing as much, but he's got a band. I guess he made friends in the state hospital. Some of them play in this band.
Bless. You know what?
From the time he was adjudicated to the time he was fully released was 40 years.
Yeah.
1982 to June 2022. So in most cases, again, I don't know what exactly he would have been charged with, how much time it would have been. He probably served more time in a state hospital on unconditional release than
he probably would have, if not life, the death penalty.
Yeah.
Probably. Well, not in Washington, I guess. They don't have that, do they? But
no, but he probably would have been life in prison. It probably would have been something really serious. But I'm just saying if they hadn't gone that route and said, oh, well, we'll sentence you to, he probably would have served. And look, now he's
thriving. Rehabilitation.
Yeah,
Let's talk about it.
The articles that I read said, the therapists were like, he really cares about his stuff. He also, I forget what his actual diagnoses were. I believe schizophrenia was one of them. I do believe he was diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder.
Oh,
which I was a little surprised to see. But again, I don't know this guy, so I can't tell you like that's true or not. Yeah, he is currently 68 years old, so he's not too old. Let me see. I think the thing that they had the most trouble with him is that he was suicidal for a while. So he was he was like actively suicidal, but that I think made it tough for them to like actually release him. I think a lot of the times when they didn't want to release him, it was because of the suicidal stuff. So I'm trying to find if they had like the other thing was the trial was really interesting. I don't want to get too far deep into it because it would be a lot of time. But Park Dietz, who's like a pretty famous forensic psychiatrist, interviewed him. And a lot of them, like, it was kind of split. Like, his Hinckley's lawyers and the doctors that worked for them said he was schizophrenic. He was crazy. Like, he didn't know. The prosecution said he's not crazy. He's got a personality disorder. So there was a lot of fighting about what actual diagnosis he had.
Right.
But I would say for the prosecution, Park Dietz testified that he had diagnosed with Hinckley with dysthymia and 3 types of personality disorders, a narcissistic schizoid mixed with borderline and passive-aggressive features. Some of this stuff doesn't exist anymore. Dietz found that none of these illnesses rendered Hinckley legally insane. His report said that there was no evidence that Hinckley was so impaired that he could not appreciate the wrongfulness of his conduct or conform his conduct to the requirements of the law. This is all from Wikipedia, by the way. So Sally Johnson, a psychiatrist in the federal prison who interviewed Hinckley more than any other doctor, emphasized that Hinckley had planned the shooting and whether he was preoccupied with being famous. Johnson said that Hinckley's interest in Foster was no different than any man's interest in a movie star. But the judge found that, or the jury found that he was insane. But I think one of the articles I read, it was like schizophrenia plus narcissistic personality disorder.
Interesting.
If you Google it, there's so many famous. When you see the pictures, if you like Google John Hinckley and you see the pictures of the whole thing, you'll be like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Anyways, so yeah, most famous. There's other ones, but another notable one that I almost did, but I was like, I don't. Is the Lorena Bobbitt, John Wayne Bobbitt?
Yeah.
There's some. I almost want to watch. There's a documentary on Amazon Prime about them. I guess.
There?
Yes.
Oh, I bet it's delicious.
So we can do an episode on that too, because I think
he's a porn star.
I know.
Franken Penis. That's his name.
I kind of remember when it happened.
And it is a Franken Penis.
I think I was.
It was in the 90s.
I remember when it was on the news. I was very, very young. But yeah, that she, the wife, pled not guilty by reason of insanity. Like if you Google like not guilty by reason of insanity, yeah, 1993. So I was still pretty young. I feel like I remember watching it on the news anyway. But there's a lot of But I don't think Manson's not guilty by reason of insanity. But like I said, I did not go into the depths of like competency and what you need to do to become competent and not competent to stand trial. Another one that actually just happened in more recent, which is also a documentary on Netflix, which is very good. We could also do an episode on this, is The Sins of Our Mother, Lori Vallow.
Oh, that was a good one.
The lady, did you watch it?
I did.
The lady who killed her kids, spoilers. And she took forever to get competency. It took a long time. So again, if you like this, let us know. I will do a whole episode on competency and what that looks like, because I think it's really misunderstood in terms of...
Yeah, it's not they just sit down and go like, how are you? Like, are you feeling crazy today? And they're like, no.
You good?
And you're
you
like,
good,
oh, cool. Right, like it's like hours and days.
It's like months.
And months of assessment and interviews, and I would not want to do it.
No. It's not what people think it is, and I don't know what people think it is, but it's not what people think. So, okay, you ready for Gay or Straight?
Yeah.
Spring Easter edition?
Yeah.
Which I realized the first one I did, I think we talked about already, but we're talking about spring this time. We're not talking about Valentine's Day.
Oh, God.
Gay or Straight?
Okay.
Flowers. Spring flowers. Tulips.
Gay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Growing a garden.
Oh, gay.
I think straight.
Oh, really?
I think straight.
Okay.
I think straight. It's fine.
Well, what kind of garden? Let's
like flowers or vegetables or
yeah. I think flower garden straight. Well,
yeah, I think straight. That's why I'm saying straight. I think. Well, I'm thinking of just like, I don't know, a garden in general. When I think garden, I think flowers. I think bushes. I think
like vegetables, which I think is also straight. Now that I think about it,
I think it's right.
Yeah,
it's for the straights.
You guys have a garden.
It's producer Justin's. Yeah, it's not mine. I don't do anything with it. Easter, gay or straight?
I'd straight. I think
I think it's gay.
Do you?
I
don't think so. I think distance from anything Easter.
Oh, Jesus rising from the dead, gay or straight?
That's gay. Yeah, that's gay. That's. You had one birthday. You don't need two. Yeah, that's
so dramatic. You just had to just come out of that little rock and say, "Guess what, fuckers?
Guess what, bitch? I'm back." Yeah.
Oh my God. Bunnies, gay or straight? Gay for me.
Bisexual.
Okay.
Bisexual.
I'll take it. Peeps, the candy peeps. Well, the marshmallow peeps.
Oh, straight. Oh God.
Hateful. Straight. I
flop.
can't.
Right.
Coloring Easter eggs, gay or straight?
I think gay.
I think gay. This is like the first one we've had that's like mostly gay.
Yeah.
And then Easter baskets, gay or straight?
Oh, gay.
Yeah, I think it's gay too.
Yeah.
I think it could be bi, but I think when I think of it, I think mostly gay.
Yeah, I guess it depends on the fanfare of it, but yeah. You didn't do Easter egg hunts.
Easter egg hunts, gay or straight? Straight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's no.
Yeah.
It's. There's no. Yeah. There's no.
Unless there's money. If it's finding money, gay.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Justin loves to tell the story of there was a year that his family did an Easter egg hunt that I did, and there was like 2 kids at the time, and they were like, "You guys want to participate?" And I was like, "Sure." And his cousin, who at the time was, how old was he? Like 7 or 8. We were like running, and he was trying to get an egg, and I pushed him because I was like, "Bitch, get what? Guess what? You're gonna learn today.
Right.
Life is not fair."
Right.
Pushed him. He was fine. Didn't hurt himself, but I got the egg.
You fuck around, you find out.
I got a quarter.
That's what that. Well,
it was rich.
Well,
it's rich.
You play games,
right? You had to learn that day. You have to learn that the world is not fair.
Exactly.
And sometimes you're gonna get shoved by somebody bigger
than you, and you just have to deal with it.
You're not gonna get the quarter. Mm-hmm. Was it worth it? Absolutely.
Well, and on that note.
So yeah, there's that.
It's okay.
Well, like I said, if you like this, please let us know. Yeah, I will do 100 more episodes on this. I'll have to write all of them down, but we can talk about all these other things. But yeah, so NGRI.
It's not as easy as you think.
That's the episode title.
That's the episode.
You want to be easy? Don't be NGRI.
Don't be NGRI. Bitch.
Yeah, bitch. Yeah. So anyways, well, if you like the podcast, please leave us a review, subscribe, leave a comment on Instagram, Two Tired Therapists. Mm-hmm. I think that's really the only thing we're active on. I know we have a Twitter X.
Oh, we do?
I think so.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, Justin shaking his head. No, we do not. Okay,
we don't
sorry.
Know. So
well, it's fine. It's a flop anyway.
Stop.
So
yeah.
Anyways, well, we're gonna stop here because
we're canceled.
Yeah, canceled. Well, we all hope you stay tired
and petty.